We're going to do a talk today called Bitcoin 101. And now you might be saying like, well, it's the second day of the conference. What are we doing with Bitcoin 101? Well, I think it really helps to go back to basics every once in a while because it's the foundation, knowing what Bitcoin is, why it's important, how do you actually use Bitcoin. That's how you, that's how you understand everything else that you're hearing at a conference like this. So if you have any lingering questions, like if you've been hearing buzzwords like blockchain technology, and you're saying, well, what is that? What really is that? Or, well, how do I get Bitcoins? Like, I bet there's some people here who don't have any Bitcoins, but they want to get them and they don't know how. So that's the kind of stuff I'm going to talk about today, and hopefully that'll clear everything up for you guys. And we'll also do a little interactive thing and have a live demo here. So, okay, let's get started. As Stephen said, by the way, I am the host of Let's Talk Bitcoin, one of the hosts, and you can find it at letstalkbitcoin.com. And we have shows a couple of times a week about all things Bitcoin and blockchain technology. Okay, so what I want to talk about today, basics, like I said, what is Bitcoin and why does it matter? What are Bitcoin addresses and wallets and what's the difference? How do you send and receive Bitcoins? How do you get Bitcoins? How do you spend Bitcoins? I mean, most people don't need much help figuring out how to spend money, but we'll quickly go over that. And then a little bit about basic security and privacy, because those things are really important, but sometimes nobody tells you like, hey, you should really do this to prevent theft and to just keep your Bitcoin safe. So we're going to go over some of that. And also multi-signature technology. What is multi-signature and how do you even think about navigating that? So I like this graphic. I borrowed this from Will Pangman. I'm not sure if he's here, but this is kind of based on something that he does with his Bitcoin Milwaukee meetups that he ran for quite a long time. What is Bitcoin and what is Bitcoin not? Bitcoin is, let's start with what it is. It's a global thing. You can use Bitcoin anywhere in the world, send and receive it anywhere. One of the great things about it, it's not tied to any geographic locale or any nation state or anything like that. You don't have to be, Bitcoin doesn't discriminate. It's like a telephone, You don't have to be a particular gender, race, whatever to use it. Anyone can use it as long as they have some basic tools, technology to be able to access the Bitcoin network. Bitcoin is decentralized. There's no central bank that issues Bitcoins. I'm sure you all know that after being at this conference for a little while. But there's no overlord. There's no Pope of Bitcoin. Satoshi Nakamoto was the Bitcoin's creator, but Satoshi stepped back, and Satoshi doesn't like issue Bitcoins and control the Bitcoin inflation rate or anything. No, that's all built into the software. It's decentralized. Bitcoin is not physical, so whereas it would be really difficult to walk across, for instance, an international border with a bunch of gold in your suitcase or a bunch of cash in your suitcase, you could walk across an international border with a bunch of Bitcoin, no problem. And as we'll talk about, you're not actually, even if you have like a phone with a Bitcoin wallet on it, let's just say, or a computer, you're not actually like carrying Bitcoins, because Bitcoins live on the internet, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later too. Bitcoin transactions are irreversible. You have to kind of think of it like cash. It's really like cash for the internet. When you send a Bitcoin transaction and then that transaction gets confirmed, which we'll go over what that means too, it is not reversible. You can't get it back. So there's no such thing as chargebacks in Bitcoin, which are the bane of a lot of merchants' existence. People get really annoyed when they have a business, for instance, eBay or something, and somebody says PayPal, oh, I never received the item. And then PayPal, of course, sides with them, and then the merchant gets screwed out of the item and the money. So you can't do that with Bitcoin. But it works both ways, because for instance, if you're selling Bitcoin to someone and you want to get cash for it, let's just say you make a deal with somebody and they say, okay, I'm going to send you a PayPal for $100 and you send me $100 worth of Bitcoin. And you say, all right, that sounds good. You send them the Bitcoin, they send you the PayPal, and then they revoke the PayPal payment. You're out of luck. You can't revoke the Bitcoin, so it kind of works both ways. Bitcoin is a couple of things. I've given this talk with Jonathan Mohan before, who runs the Bitcoin New York City meetup, which is one of the biggest ones in the country, actually. And he likes to say, Bitcoin needs like new terminology, because it's almost like as if you called the dollars in PayPals, you called PayPal the website itself PayPal, and then you also called the internet PayPal. That's almost like what's going on with Bitcoin here. A Bitcoin is a token, a digital token that you can send that represents value, monetary value. Bitcoin is also a piece of software, and when computers connect to the internet and connect to each other via the Bitcoin network, it forms the Bitcoin network or payment system. And so yeah, there's a couple of things that people can refer to when they're saying Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin not? It's not a company, it's not a stock, it's not a bank. And I know there's there's a popular slogan, I think, for blockchain.info. Well, they used to have that, it's a Bitcoin company, and they would say, be your own bank. Well, I kind of like, well, maybe you don't need a bank, because Bitcoin is not a bank. You can make an analogy to banks, but there's nobody in control. You are holding your own money, and you are completely in control of it, unless you hand over your control to someone else voluntarily, but you don't have to do that. Whereas with a bank, you do have to do that. Bitcoin is not a stock. You guys all probably know this. It's not a fiat currency. The discussion always comes up of, well, what is Bitcoin backed by, right? Like, people say this, well, what's backing Bitcoin? Well, what's backing gold? Why is gold valuable? I think it's because people think it's valuable, right? People believe it has value, and they're willing to exchange it as a medium of exchange. It's the same thing with Bitcoin. If you want to talk about intrinsic value, maybe the thing that you can do with Bitcoin, the thing that makes it useful, the reason why people see value in it is because you can send it anywhere in the world. It's easily divisible. There's no cost to divide it and put it back together. That's pretty special. Those are properties that no other medium of exchange really has. Bitcoin is not anonymous or untraceable, and we'll talk about privacy a little bit later in this talk. By the way, I'm going to have this, I will put this up that you can download a little bit later, so if you want to write notes, feel free, but you can always download the talk later too. Okay, so let's move on. So where are actually Bitcoins located, right? That's a question people have a lot. So if I have Bitcoins on my phone and then I send them to your phone, how do they get from my phone to your phone? Well, Bitcoins are on the internet. Every Bitcoin that's out there lives on the internet, and they're not actually stored on your device. And so if your device goes kablooey and you lose your computer or your phone and you have some Bitcoins in that wallet, you can always make a backup of your Bitcoin wallet and you won't lose your Bitcoins because they're actually on the internet. They're not stored on your hard drive or anything like that. What you're storing on your phone or your computer or in your Bitcoin wallet is access to your Bitcoins. So you're storing the ability to move your Bitcoins around back and forth. And we'll talk a little more about this in just a minute. What is the blockchain? Well, the blockchain, the easiest way to think about the blockchain is that it's like a book, okay, or a ledger. A record of accounting. And a new page is being added to the book continuously every 10 minutes with the Bitcoin blockchain. And so each block is a piece of data that lists what Bitcoin transactions happened in the last 10 minutes. And that's just continually updating over time, making a chain of blocks. Like pages in a book. It's as though you started with some amount of money in a traditional accounting kind of thing, or a spreadsheet. And then you tracked where that money goes, where it's set here and there, and you keep adding a new page every 10 minutes. So that's what the blockchain is. There's not much more to it than that. I mean, it's really pretty simple. That's at least the basic gist. Blockchain technology was actually a really big innovation. Nobody thought of how to solve these problems before Satoshi Nakamoto came in. And it was the problem of, well, how do you have a distributed, trustless system for sending payments back and forth with no trusted authority, with nobody keeping a record, with no central body keeping a record? Can we do this peer-to-peer? And the blockchain was the system that they came up with that Satoshi came up with to solve that problem. And so the blockchain can be applied, or the concept of the blockchain can be applied outside of just Bitcoin, and you'll see a lot of other technologies that are using blockchains for everything from things like sending messages to time-stamping documents There's a thing where you can take a so-called hash, which is just a mathematical algorithm, and you can hash anything from one letter to somebody's name to an entire document, like a will or a contract or a marriage certificate, anything. You could get creative. And then you take that hash and you put it into a blockchain, and it's time-stamped because the blockchain has this time-stamping feature. So blockchains can be used for all kinds of things other than just sending Bitcoins back and forth, but that was the original use. Okay, so how do you send and receive Bitcoins? I like to use this email analogy here. When you have an email address, you can give it out publicly, right? If somebody has your email address, they can't read your emails, but they can send an email to you, right? So my email address is stephanie@letstalkbitcoin.com, so if I give that to you, you can send me an email, but you can't read my emails. However, if you get my email password, then you could log into my account and you could not only send emails, but you could read my emails that I've received from other people. So Bitcoin works kind of like that. The analogous things in Bitcoin are the public and private keys. And that's when people say public-private key cryptography. There's a pair of keys. One of them you can give out publicly so that people can send you Bitcoins. And the other one you can keep private so you can access your Bitcoins that you've received. So yeah, in Bitcoin, we have a Bitcoin address that's just kind of like an email address. It's totally safe to give that out publicly. In fact, you can't receive payments without giving it out. Well, maybe not publicly, but to give it to at least the person who is going to pay you. They need that information to be able to pay you. But your private key, you're going to use when you need to access your Bitcoins that you've received, when you need to move them to a different address or spend them somewhere or send them to another one of your own addresses. That's when the private key comes in. And the private key, you want to keep private because anybody who has that can access your Bitcoins and they can move it to their own address. So you keep that private. Keep your private keys like your underwear, it's private. Okay. So, how does a Bitcoin transaction go down? Like, what actually happens? What are the mechanics? And we'll do a live demo here in just a few minutes so you all can see what it looks like. But it's really simple, actually. All you do is you get, if I'm going to send Bitcoins, I would get the address of the person I want to pay, the Bitcoin address. I would enter how much Bitcoin I want to send to that person. I would click send, or maybe I'll have to enter a password or a PIN number. But if it's a small amount, like on a mobile wallet, for instance, maybe you keep that unsecured because it's just more of a pain in the butt to enter a password every time you want to make a payment instead of just keeping it unsecured. And then the transaction gets broadcast through the internet or through your mobile network or what have you. Somehow it connects to other nodes in the peer-to-peer network that are nearby. It gets propagated through the whole Bitcoin network. And eventually, as blocks come out every 10 minutes, the transaction gets confirmed. And when we say a transaction is confirmed, that means the transaction is recorded in a block. So that data that includes the Bitcoin transaction that you're sending is in a block in the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, as the block gets further and further into the past, as the block gets older that your transaction is included in, and as more blocks come after it, the greater is the certainty that that transaction is, that it really happened, it's really part of the blockchain. As it matures, it gathers confirmations, and each block that comes out after it is one confirmation. So if you want to make sure that a Bitcoin transaction is really confirmed, like let's say you're buying a house or something, and you're paying the seller in Bitcoin, they're going to want to wait for a bunch of confirmations to make sure they really have that money in hand, and it's really there's no possibility of it of any funny business happening. But if you're just buying a cup of coffee or something, for a couple bucks, you can pretty much walk away after the transaction's propagated to the Bitcoin network and be confident that nothing's going to happen with it. And if it does, it's $2. Okay, so let's do a demo. I've got a mobile wallet on my phone. I'm using an Android phone, and I see Roz has just walked in. I am running my Cilium wallet on my phone. You can see it here, maybe because I've got a pretty big phone. And I've got about $8 worth of Bitcoin on my phone. Now, does anybody in the audience, like in the front row, have a Bitcoin wallet up and want some Bitcoins? If you're a Bitcoin virgin, I would like to give you some Bitcoins. just a little bit to get your first Bitcoins if you have a wallet already up. If not, I'll send some Bitcoins to Brian just so you can see how it works, how easy it is. Anybody? Okay, I'll give this to Brian. So, what I'm going to do is I've got my wallet up. I'm going to click send, and send Bitcoins. Brian, you can pull up your Bitcoin QR code, and he's already got it pulled up. Okay, I won't ask you. So I'm going to scan Brian's QR code, and my phone camera looks at his QR code. I'm going to enter the amount that I want to send. And I'm feeling generous today, so I'm sending you $8 worth of Bitcoin. And I'm going to click send, enter my password here. And now it says broadcasting transaction, and it's been sent. So Brian, you can tell me as your phone refreshes when that shows up for you. Right now, my transaction is being propagated to the Bitcoin network. It's going to nodes around locally and then to the broader internet. Oh, yep, and it showed up. So that's how it works. It's as easy as that. It just takes a couple seconds. And by the way, if anybody would like to get their first Bitcoins, I love to give people their first Bitcoins. So if you have no Bitcoins and you want to just practice sending and receiving, let me know, find me today, and I will help you set up a wallet on your phone, and I'll send you a few dollars worth of Bitcoin, and you can play with it. And then you'll have Bitcoins. But I'm also going to talk about how you get Bitcoins, different ways to get them in this talk. Okay, so that's it. That's how easy it is to send and receive Bitcoin. How do you pick a wallet? Okay, well, if you want to use Bitcoin, you need a wallet. So how do you choose a wallet? Well, there's a great page on this website, on bitcoin.org. And it has a bunch of options where you can just go down the line and see what device you're looking at, whether you want a mobile wallet or a desktop wallet or a web wallet or even a hardware wallet. And you pick which operating system or which type of phone you have, and it'll give you all the different wallets that work on that type of device. And you can just pick your favorite one. And really, most Bitcoin wallets are pretty easy to use. They have different features, so you can read about them a little bit. But I've got some recommendations. These are just my picks. You guys remember going to Blockbuster Video back in the 90s, and they had the staff picks? Well, these are my staff picks, okay, for Bitcoin. For Android phones, I like Mycelium. For iPhone, I like Airbit's wallet, and the Airbit's team is here. They're awesome. We've also got Mycelium people here. For a web wallet or a wallet that you can use just in a browser without depending pretty much on any device, I like CryptoKit. That's a Chrome extension. Makes it really easy to send tips or micropayments or buy things on a website because you don't have to open up another window. It's just a little extension that you click on, and it automatically detects Bitcoin addresses on the page. You can send it. Rush Wallet is a website you can go to and move your mouse around and automatically create a web wallet. And also, Green Address is another great web wallet. And they also have apps, too, that work on phones. Green Address is pretty cool. And for desktop, I really like Electrum, because Electrum lets you keep a record of, it lets you, label Bitcoin addresses and say, oh, this is a payment from Steven for the voiceover that I did for this conference or something. Armory is a little more advanced, but it gives you a lot of really cool security features and backup features that you can use. And any of these, if you create a wallet on any device, you can always make a backup copy of that wallet and you can port it to another device. You can have a safety in case that device croaks or whatever. Everybody's had hard drive failures and stuff like that. So always make a backup of your wallet, and the wallet will step you through that. Okay, so we got that. So how do you get Bitcoins? That's a good question. Everybody wants to know how you get Bitcoin. Is there anybody out here in the audience who doesn't have Bitcoins but wants to get them? Yeah, okay, so there's a couple people. So I think there's 4 basic categories, ways in which you can get Bitcoin. 1, you can get someone to give them to you as a gift or a tip. 2, you can exchange fiat currency or money of choice for Bitcoin. 3, you can exchange Bitcoin for goods and services. Or otherwise known as accepting Bitcoins at your business. And 4, you can mine for Bitcoins. Now, the last one, mining, it's not really something that the average person can do at this point. It's almost like mining for gold. You could go into Roger Ver uses this analogy a lot. You could go up into the foothills of Sierra Nevada or wherever and start panning for gold, and you might find some. You can even start mining for gold if you wanted to invest in the equipment and the labor to do that. And you might find some gold, but you might not. It's pretty risky. So, you know, if that's not something you would do, if instead you would just choose to buy a gold coin or something if you want to invest in gold, Bitcoin mining is kind of like that. You kind of have to have some specialized knowledge and hardware, and it's not really worth it for the average person. It's way more cost effective to just exchange fiats or exchange services and goods for Bitcoin or get them as a gift. Okay, a little more about exchanges. There's a couple different types of exchanges. So what I mean by that is there's your traditional exchange, like the classic, you go to a website, you enter all your information, you give them your bank account, you link your bank account to it, your conventional bank account, you give them your social security number, they do all the AML, KYC business where they figure out everything about you and your family and your mother and everything else, and you give them all your information and you trust them with it, and then you trade Bitcoins on those exchanges. That's one way to do it. There's also a gift exchange, which is really, you can only do that with a website like purse.io, or Broker is another one, but I'm not sure if they're still around. Actually, I think they shut down. So purse.io is an example of a gift exchange whereby I would put Bitcoins into purse.io. Let's say I want to buy something on Amazon and I want to use Bitcoins, okay? I put the item I want to buy on my Amazon wish list. I put some Bitcoins in the purse.io. Someone else buys my item from Amazon and ships it to me off my wish list, and then they get my Bitcoins. So it's an indirect kind of exchange, but it's a way to buy Bitcoins that doesn't require, that you can do with a credit card, which you can't do in other places, and that doesn't require all this AML, KYC stuff. But it's really, you know, it's really only for relatively small amounts, stuff that you would buy on Amazon. And then there's peer-to-peer exchanges, and these are really cool because if you're into privacy, if you don't want to trust these exchanges with all your personal information, which I wouldn't really blame you for that because it's not necessarily going to be secure. There's a lot of breaches and hacks, and not to mention the privacy risk from just the government, you know, getting your info, knowing you're into Bitcoin. If you don't want to go that route, you can do peer-to-peer exchanges, which basically involves finding a person locally in the physical world and exchanging cash or something else. You know, perhaps it could be a gift card or maybe even services or goods, something like that, for Bitcoin. But usually it's just cash for Bitcoin. And you can use Mycelium Local Trader. They have a feature in their app that's where you can meet people locally. It detects where you are in the world and you can meet up, exchange cash for Bitcoin. And there's also Local Bitcoins, which is really popular. Local Bitcoins lets you meet up with people locally, but it can hook you up with people online who are willing to sell you Bitcoins for online methods. Now, beware, they've got tips on their website to minimize fraud and stuff like that. Don't sell anyone Bitcoins for PayPal, but if you're buying Bitcoins, you know, it can be a good way to get Bitcoins. And it can be a good way to make connections in your community too. Like I know a lot of people who have met folks on Local Bitcoins who were interested in Bitcoin and then started a Bitcoin meetup in their town when they didn't have one before. So there's that community aspect to it as well. Okay, how do you know the exchange rate? Well, I really like this website, Bitcoin Average. It takes a weighted average of all of the different Bitcoin exchanges based on the volume on that exchange and the price. And then it tells you what the average exchange rate for Bitcoin is. So it's a very fair way to, you know, see the Bitcoin price. Also, there's an app that I really like for Android called Bitcoin Paranoid. And I just love the name because you can set these little sound effects when the price goes up more than 3 or 5 or 10%. You can choose what you like. It'll make a little ding, 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 you know. And so it kind of builds excitement. I remember back in 2013, that winter, you know, when the price was just crazy, fluctuating with Bitcoin. My Bitcoin Paranoid was just buzzing like constantly all night. I had to shut it off eventually. Okay, so how do you accept Bitcoins at your business? Well, there's a couple of different ways, and it really depends on what your business is. and I'll go over a couple different ways. But basically, you want to keep a record of like who paid you or who did you pay for whatever. And I would note down like what the fiat value of the Bitcoin is at the time of the exchange, in case you want to pay taxes on it and things like that. And also the transaction ID, but then like your accounting is on the blockchain. You can pull that data from the Bitcoin network. You can see how much Bitcoin was exchanged at what exact time and which address it went to. So as long as you can keep the addresses straight, you're kind of set with your accounting. That is a screenshot from Electrum Wallet, by the way, which is one of my favorite wallets for desktop. And you can label addresses in Electrum, so you can say like, okay, this transaction is from this person. Electrum also has a thing called an extended public key, which you can plug into a WordPress website, for instance. There's a plugin called Bitcoin Payments for WooCommerce, and you can plug in your Electrum extended public key, which gives you all the public addresses in the wallet. And every time a customer comes to your website, they basically get a fresh address, and the Bitcoin comes directly into your Electrum wallet, and you can label those transactions as you see fit. So it's a really nice system. If you have an online business, you can always integrate with BitPay or Coinbase. That's mostly if you want to sell the Bitcoin when you receive it, if you want to immediately convert it into fiat money, if you're just using Bitcoin for the purposes of the payment gateway, because it's easy and it's convenient and it doesn't have as high fees as credit cards, you can do that. If you want to keep the Bitcoin, you can do a little more do-it-yourself solution. I think you can keep the Bitcoin in Coinbase or BitPay, but they do have the option to sell it immediately as it comes in. There's also, for bricks and mortar businesses, there's point of sale systems that have Bitcoin integrated, including Stripe and Square for these little businesses, like if you go around to fairs selling cupcakes, I don't know. Also, Ingenico is like a huge company that makes these terminals, these payment terminals that just integrated with BitPay to offer really nice, convenient Bitcoin payment channels that really don't require much training at all for employees. So if you have like a restaurant with employees, you might want to look into that as far as accepting Bitcoin goes. Where do you spend Bitcoins, right? Like I said, most people don't really need help with this. They'll figure out how to spend the money once they have it, right? I have that problem. But you can spend Bitcoins at almost unlimited places. This looks a little washed out here on the screen, but I took a screenshot from coinmap.org, which is this website that lists basically all the bricks and mortar businesses or all the physical businesses around the world that accept Bitcoin. So you can go and zoom in on your GPS location and see all the businesses around that accept Bitcoin. And here I just took a little shot of Las Vegas, and they've got, places, including this casino right here, where you can pay with Bitcoin. And like, for instance, in that middle area there's 11 places, and there's little restaurants and shops, so you can figure it out. Also, there's lots of websites that accept Bitcoin. You can tip people with Bitcoin, tip your favorite podcaster or someone who makes a video on YouTube. So there's all kinds of ways to spend Bitcoins. Okay, some basic security and privacy stuff. I think this is really important to talk about. How do you secure your Bitcoins? Well, if you can, always use two-factor authentication. We've got Google Authenticator, Authy, a lot of good stuff. Use a strong password. Don't make your password like Bitcoin123. There's a thing you can do with Bitcoin called a brain wallet, which means you basically can remember like an 8 to 10 word phrase, and that phrase becomes your private key. And then you can access that Bitcoin wallet from anywhere with the mnemonic stored in your mind. That's called a brain wallet. However, there are people who scrape Google for like 8 to 10 word phrases to try to get people's brain wallets, and then they can access the Bitcoins that are in there. There's also, if you use a common 8 to 10 word phrase, or if you use, just a weak one, someone's going to have access to that private key and they're going to take your Bitcoin. So just use a strong password. Don't type it into Google. Don't write it down. Like write it maybe on a piece of paper and laminate it. Keep it in your safe or something like that. Fire safe. Keep your private keys private. Don't reuse addresses, and secure your email. Email phishing scams are a big thing, especially when there are some Bitcoin wallets that will email you like a copy of your wallet. They'll email you like a backup copy, which is great for you to have it as a backup, but then when someone hacks your email, they can get your Bitcoins. So secure your email, put on two-factor authentication whenever it's available, use a strong password, and keep your private keys private. So, I've put in this little slide here. It's supposed to be a double-edged sword in the middle, haha, get it? So, is Bitcoin like the ultimate in privacy, or is Bitcoin the ultimate in trackability? What do you think? It kind of has the potential to be either, but it depends on how you use it, and it depends on whether you value privacy and whether your actions reflect that value in your privacy. You can use Bitcoin very privately because you don't have to link your name or your real-world identity to your Bitcoin address. But if your address or your Bitcoin addresses do get linked to your real-world identity, either voluntarily or not through someone investigating you on the blockchain, that could be problematic for a number of reasons. I don't know if I have to say it to this crowd, because you guys probably all value privacy quite a bit, but, sometimes people ask, well, what do you got to hide, right? Why would you care if somebody knows what Bitcoins you're sending? Well, there's lots of different reasons. What if you're trying to get out of an abusive marriage or something, and you don't want your spouse to know that you're buying plane tickets to get away from them or something? What if you don't want, what if you don't want your parents to know, you're a teenager, you don't want your parents to know you're buying tampons at Walmart or something like that? What if you just want to keep your finances private? And what's wrong with that? Shouldn't we be able to do that? Isn't that kind of a basic human right, privacy? I think so. So if you care about it, then there's ways to help ensure that you've got it. And just basics on this, Bitcoin privacy you can get really complicated. If you really want to learn more about Bitcoin privacy, there's a book called The Anonymous Bitcoin Book by Christoph Atlas, which is very good if you want to get really, really deep into it. But just the basics, don't reuse your Bitcoin addresses, because that creates a strong association with you with that address, and then also with anyone else who you're sending transactions to. So it's just good privacy hygiene to not reuse Bitcoin addresses. They're meant to be thrown away. Like there's more Bitcoin addresses potentially than grains of sand out there. So don't worry about, using up all the Bitcoin addresses. They're totally meant to be throwaway, one-use things. Yes, question?
Do we know what apps or Bitcoin wallets on our phones automatically cycle through addresses, or is that something that we should keep out?
Yeah, so the question is, which Bitcoin apps or wallets automatically cycle through addresses? And any wallet that is HD or hierarchically deterministic will give you a new Bitcoin address every time you do a transaction. So Mycelium does that, Electrum does that, which I mentioned for desktop, and just any wallet that's HD. If you want, Airbitz as well, yeah, thank you. If you want to check out, there's a website called Open Bitcoin Privacy Project, and this is a cool project because they're actually rating all these different Bitcoin wallets based on how good their privacy features are. So they're hoping to bring a little more incentive to create wallets with privacy features, but the highest rated wallets last time they did this were, oh gosh, I think Armory Wallet for desktop, and Mycelium was pretty good on there too. So check out the Open Bitcoin Privacy Project if you want more details on which wallets are the best for privacy. But yeah, just be mindful of associating your name with a Bitcoin address. If you want to put out on your website or blog a tip address, that's cool, but just be aware that everybody can know forever that that Bitcoin address belongs to you, and then they can watch it on the blockchain. They can see how many tips you received, how many transactions you received, how much, when you send Bitcoins out of that address, or when Bitcoins moved out of that address. So, and remember that the blockchain is forever. And that's important. Just one sec, I'll get to your question. The blockchain is forever. So, if buying, let's see, what might be questionable here. Let's say you buy a book today, a book about Bitcoin privacy, let's just say. And that book is perfectly legal to purchase right now. But then, in 10 years, that book becomes banned. It becomes criminalized. Suddenly you're a criminal and there's a record that you purchased that book on the blockchain. So the blockchain is forever. And because of that, because things can be retroactively criminalized and things like that, wouldn't you want to err on the side of privacy? I think everybody would. So was there a question?
Comment, yeah. I was going to say on your first topic about not reusing addresses, that not only was your point very valid, but if you just reuse the same address each time, when you send your Bitcoin transaction out, you're actually sending your entire wallet out to the receiver, and then you're getting the change back for whatever you decided not to pay them. So if I have 10 Bitcoins and I want to pay you 4, I'm sending you 10 and receiving 6 back. So if I use the same address every time, someone could construct an entire transaction history and know my exact value in Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anybody who didn't hear that or for the video, the comment was, don't reuse addresses because someone can kind of they can piece together your entire transaction history, because not only will they see your outgoing transactions, but they'll see the change that you receive back into your own wallet, so they can link your addresses together and get even more dirt. Another question?
I just want to make a comment about the addresses. There's actually slightly more atoms in the known universe than there are Bitcoin addresses. It's a big number.
Right on. Cool. Okay, well, we're almost done. I think this is like my last slide, so I know we're a little bit over time. What is multi-signature technology? You're going to hear that word come up quite a bit, so I just thought I'd just go over it and tell you what it is. Multi-signature is a way you can put Bitcoins in a Bitcoin address. And most Bitcoin addresses, the single signature Bitcoin addresses, start with the number 1. Multi-signature addresses start with the number 3, so that's how you can distinguish and tell them apart. A multi-signature address can have more than one person holding keys to the address, and a certain number of those keys are required to sign off on sending the Bitcoins out of the address. So for instance, the applications of this, so like think about if you had a spouse and you wanted to have a joint Bitcoin account with your spouse, and either one of you can send a payment out of that address. You might have a one of two multi-signature address where there's 2 keys, each spouse has one of the keys, and either one of them is required to send Bitcoins out. What if you had a board of directors for a company and there's five board members and you need 3 of them to approve expenses? Well, you can have a 3 of 5 multi-sig account. What if somebody's got a bunch of Bitcoins, they want to leave them to their 4 children, right? But only when they're dead and gone do they want their kids to be able to get access to these Bitcoins. They maybe have a 4 of 4 multi-sig and they have 4 children, they give 1 key to each one, and everybody has to agree and all sign off to move those Bitcoins. For an individual, you might have a 2 of 4 multi-sig account where you have 4 different keys. One of them's a backup buried in your backyard, one of them's on your computer, the other one's on your phone, and the other one you give to your friend who lives in Oklahoma. And so that way, you control all those keys, but if there's a lot of Bitcoins in that address, it's very difficult to steal them. You'd have to get access to 2 of those keys instead of just 1. So multi-signature can really increase security as well as just what you can do with Bitcoin functionality, bringing more people into the decision. And then here's some multi-sig resources. Copay is my favorite multi-sig wallet. It makes it really easy for organizational multi-sig use of Bitcoin. There's also a great write-up by Pamela Morgan, who's the expert on multi-sig on her blog. She tells you how to, for free, she tells you exactly how to set up a really secure multi-signature Bitcoin address. And then bitaddress.org is an address generator, so you can download that web page offline to an offline computer that's not connected to the internet and create Bitcoin addresses that are offline and secure. Okay, so I know we're a little bit over time. Thanks so much for bearing with me. This is my contact information. If you want to talk to me or have a question or comment, you can email me, Stephanie@letstalkbitcoin.com. Check out Let's Talk Bitcoin, subscribe to the podcast feed. And I am also a voice actor, and you can look at my website at smvoice.info, and I'll throw this presentation up there so you can download it at the end. Haven't put it up yet, but I will. So, yeah. All right. I hope by the end of this talk you can help a friend in need install a Bitcoin wallet and maybe send them 1 millibit, because that would show that you know how to use Bitcoin and you're able to spread the word. And if anybody wants a little bit of Bitcoin at this conference, just let me know and I'll be happy to give you your first Bitcoin. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephanie.